Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm excited to bring this bill. We've been talking about it for quite a while, 3 or 4 years, similar ones like this. But I'll go ahead and go through the bill a little bit and explain some other stuff. This is a joint resolution requesting Congress to call a convention for proposing amendments to the United States Constitution as specified. The framers of our Constitution in the United States empowered the state legislators to be guardians of liberty against future abuses of power by the federal government. The federal government has created a crushing national debt through improper and imprudent spending. The federal government has invaded the legitimate roles of the states through the manipulative process of federal mandates, quite often unfunded. The federal government has created or ceased to operate under a proper interpretation of the Constitution. Instead of having a Constitution we can carry in our pocket, it's a book about this thick that judicial rulings have said, now our Constitution is this. And that's not what the founders anticipated. So it is a solemn duty of the states to protect the liberty of the people, particularly the future generations, by proposing amendments to the Constitution through a convention of states under Article 5 for the purpose of restraining the federal government in their abuses of power. So therefore be it resolved, the legislature of the state of Wyoming hereby applies to Congress under the provisions of Article 5 for the calling of a convention of the several states limited to proposing amendments, and the topics will be impose physical restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for federal officials and members of Congress. The legislature of the state of Wyoming adopts the application made under Section 1 of this joint resolution expressly subject to the following reservations and understandings and declarations. An application to the Congress of the United States to call a convention of the several states for the purpose of proposing amendments to the Constitution confirms no power to Congress other than the power to call the convention. The power of Congress to exercise this ministerial duty consists solely of the authority to name a reasonable time and place for the initial meeting of the convention. Congress shall call an amendment convention of the states only upon the receipt of application for substantially same purpose as this application from 2/3 of the states. That's 34. Currently, for this particular one, we're at 19. Congress does not have the power or authority to determine any rules for the governing of this amendment Constitution. Congress does not have the power to set the number of delegates sent by the states, nor does it have the power to name the delegates of the convention. The power to name the delegates remains within the states to decide. By definition, a convention of states to propose amendments to the United States Constitution means that the states shall vote on the basis of one state, one vote. A convention of the several states to propose amendments to the Constitution shall be limited to the consideration of the topics specified in this joint resolution and no other. This application is made with respect or express understanding that all amendment that any way seeks to amend, modify, or repeal any provision of the Bill of Rights shall not be authorized for consideration in any manner. Pursuant to Article 5 of the United States Constitution, Congress may determine whether proposed amendments shall be ratified by the legislature of several states or by state ratification conventions. In this proposal, we're saying we would recommend that Congress select ratification by the legislature of several states, which has been the way that we have done it, all except for one. This application constitutes a continuing application in accordance with Article 5 until the legislatures of at least 2/3 of the several states have made applications on the same subject. And lastly, the Secretary of State, when this is passed, this resolution will send a copy to the President, President of the Senate, Speaker of the House, of the Congress, and to our Wyoming congressional delegation and to other states, so they know. I did give you a handout, just so you all had in your hands Article 5, and I'm briefly going to go through it. In Article 5, it says, "The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution." That's the way it's happened all along so far. Every day, they can propose amendments if they can get 2/3 of a vote in each house. Why shouldn't the states be able to do that? We should get together and talk about it. It also says the Congress, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. That's all they can do. They can't tell us how we're going to act, what the rules will be, who will go, or anything. They can just tell when the date is and where. And then the rest of it says which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states or by conventions of 3/4 of the states. If you go down a little bit further, the Constitution grants of power to various assemblies, Congress, state legislatures, federal and state conventions are as follows. And I think I've already gone through them, but I'm going to go through them again. It gives authority to 2/3 of each house of Congress to propose amendments. Like I said, every day they can do that. It gives the authority to 2/3 of the state legislatures to make an application for a convention for proposing amendments. It gives the authority to Congress to call the convention. It gives the authority to the convention for proposing amendments. So when you get at this convention, it'll be big. It'll be the nation will be watching. The state that gets it will be going, yeah, there's a lot of money coming in here. All the people will be there to watch. But at that convention, that's where the proposals will be made. Authority of the Congress to decide whether ratification shall be by state legislatures or conventions. And if Congress selects the former method, authority to the state legislators to ratify it, 3/4 of the states. And then also if the state if it's by a ratifying convention. On the back page, I'd like to go to the statutes that we passed in 2017 to limit our delegates when they do go to these conventions. I know this is a big topic for many of you and of a concern. But quite a few of us were here when we passed this, I think. Item A, no delegate shall have the authority to vote to allow consideration of or to approve an unauthorized amendment for ratification to the United States Constitution. Any delegate shall be directed to vote for procedures and rules mandating that the convention remain a convention of states where each state is represented by one vote. Any vote made in violation of subsection A and B of this section shall be null and void, and the delegate making the vote shall be immediately recalled and replaced. In Part D, it says each delegate shall be required to take the following oath. I think I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. I do solemnly swear to affirm that to the convention, to the best of my abilities, I will, as a delegate or alternate to an Article 5 convention, uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America and Wyoming. I will not vote to allow consideration of or to approve any unauthorized amendment proposed for ratification to the United States Constitution. I understand and accept any penalties that Wyoming law may impose on me for violate this oath. Sections E, it says, any delegate who violates the oath shall be guilty of felony punishable by imprisonment for 5 years or a fine not more than $10,000 or both, and shall be ineligible to serve as a delegate, and any certification of the delegate shall be null and void. And then at the end it says, the Secretary of State shall notify the President of the Wyoming Senate and Speaker of the House in writing of the need to assign delegates when we get to the 34 states. The members of the Senate shall elect 3 members of the Senate to serve as delegates, and the members of the House of Representatives shall elect 3 members of the House to serve as delegates. So that gives you an idea of how we'll go about that. I do want to say, as I walk these halls and look at all the old pictures that are out there, I quite often wonder how our forefathers would have dealt with this. And it's interesting to find that our state took this on when they had issues with our federal government and the power they're taking away from us. And they weren't fearful. They jumped right out there and said, we don't like it. And in fact, in 1939, we had proposed an amendment that we wanted to talk about, or a proposal on income tax and on the limit of income tax. In 1959, we proposed that we wanted to talk about limiting federal powers. We're kind of doing that right now. In 1961, we had a balanced budget amendment that they wanted to propose. At that point in time, they knew the federal government was out of control then, spending money. We're $31.5 trillion in debt. Can't even imagine that. That's $31.5 million. Don't even know what that is. In 1979, we proposed a balanced budget on emergencies. In 1963, we wanted to talk about the Supreme Court and review some of the decisions they had just recently made. Also in 1963, we had a couple other ones. We wanted to talk about the apportionment of legislatures. At that point in time, I kind of think our senators were maybe by county, I'm not sure, but I think that was overruled by a proportion of population, but they wanted to talk about it. In 1963, they also wanted to talk about how a mode of amendments. And then in 2009, everybody got fearful, and we rescinded all those. Many states did that, which is sad. I don't think it was the right thing to do. Don't be fearful. But luckily, in 2017, same time we did the Delegate Limitation Act, we proposed that we would go talk about the balanced budget, our federal budget, and try their hands. So with that, I'll sit down and ask for questions, and hope you'll vote for the resolution. It's so much needed. Let's go take control of the federal government that the states form.